This is The Express with Gary Allen, your 360-degree view of the world. Now, here's your host, Gary Allen.
And good evening, everybody, and welcome to this edition of The Express. It's exciting for me to be here with you tonight. I hope everybody's had a great week since we spoke last, and thank you for taking a few minutes out of your day to join us here on The Express. For a little reminder, you can catch me on Facebook at Gary Allen, A-L-A-N, or you can go on over to youtube.com, Gary Allen, The Express interviews, and this show will be up come this Friday. Plus, you can also listen to a bunch of my other past shows if you're interested. Thursday night at 7 p.m., this show repeats itself on diversitybroadcastnetwork.com, our sister station, thanks to Renee, a good friend of this network. And progressivevoices.com has got me up there now, so you can listen in. And for those of you on TuneIn, we appreciate you taking the time out of your day to join us. Just go in there. If you're not familiar with it, it's tunein.com. Put in tmvcafe.com as one of your favorites, and we're ready to rock and roll, and you can listen to us anytime, and everything is absolutely great. I have a great guest for us tonight, but before we get to any of that, I just wanted to say thank you to everybody who does come on the Express's Facebook page and let everybody know what's happening, and I can let you know. I've got some great stuff. And next week I have a fabulous guest coming on, someone who's been with us before. And my guest tonight and that guest have something very much in common with one another, and I will mention it when we get to that point in the program. My guest for tonight is Tom Thompson. He's an author and of two wonderful books, Fit to Lead, we'll talk about that, and his brand new book, Kickstart. Tom has also received a Master's of Science degree of I know I was going to get this wrong. Master's of Science degree in
physical exercise.
Yeah, from the University of North Texas, Kinesiology, a certificate in advanced studies of organizational leadership from Regent University, a doctorate of strategic leadership degree from Regent University, and in 2011, Tom earned a master's degree in teaching from Austin College. As well as at the age of 61 years old, he set an NCAA record, which we will get to a little bit later on. What is it? Kinesiology?
It's kinesiology.
There you go. I knew I was going to get that wrong. I always get that word wrong. Tom, welcome to the Express, and thank you for taking a few minutes out of your day to join us.
Hey, Gary, thank you. It's a privilege.
Well, it's an honor to have you on, particularly when, as I said before, your book, Kickstart, a story of overcoming life's obstacles to kickstart your future, which we all do have problems from time to time. Before we get into that, Randy Jones, I just want to say hello to you. Thank you so much for joining us, as well as everybody else. Tom, what went through your mind when you told your family that you were going to go ahead and go back to college and you were going to try and nevertheless play football for a college team in your late 50s?
Well, my wife looked at me kind of like a dog that doesn't hear you quite well and cocked her head and said, "You're going to do what?" And I told her, and she said, "And what for?" And I said, "Well, I want to write a book." And she said, "Well, let me think about that a little bit." And which I let her do that before we moved forward. And she came back and said, "Okay, sounds good. Go ahead, go for it." So
wow.
It's kind of how it got started, at least at the family front. I didn't tell a lot of people, as you might imagine, because I didn't want to become, cocktail and talk or dinner conversation. So I just kept it to a few close friends, and that worked out.
Mm-hmm. That had to be interesting, though, the look on your children's faces and even the friends you told. But knowing you from everything that I've read in the book, they probably weren't the least bit surprised, considering you've had a very active life, a very interesting life. And as I said at the top of the program, a book that could have been written about my life as well. We talked about it yesterday. I, too, grew up in a dysfunctional family. But before we get into that, it's often said that sports is a metaphor for life. Do you think that's true?
Oh, I do. I think it, and especially these days, because it's so unpredictable. We get the idea that all we have to do is work hard and do the conditioning workouts that coaches want us to do, and this, that, and the other, and feel like it's going to guarantee something for us. But really, all it guarantees is the opportunity to be called upon. And that's the way it is in life. You can go to school and work hard and do all sorts of things, but we get the notion that success is at the other end.
Yeah.
And it's primarily because we look at success as an outcome.
Mm-hmm.
And,
but success is not necessarily, that's the end product. But I've always been a firm believer in, and of course I've been in the business of show business for a long time, and you've known a number of people that have been in the show business world. It's not the end result, it's the journey and what you learn about yourself and the environment around you, I think, that's more important than actually achieving the goal. The goal is the ideal thing.
Well, and the goals are fluid. And what I think when we talked the other day, I mentioned that success to me is the daily realization of your goals. Mm-hmm. And it's no different than they have battle plans, but then they'll have, 3 or 4 alternate plans that will change position based on the resistance that they find in the battlefield. And it's the same thing in life. Mm-hmm. It's not a linear journey. It's got detours, and it's got roadblocks and all sorts of things that can cause you to recalculate or rethink what it is you want to accomplish. And speaking of that, one of the things that I talk about often is, instead of bucket list goals as we age, mm-hmm. we should develop quality of life goals, because a bucket list, infers it's for the individual that wants to get it off their list. Mm-hmm. And a quality of life goal means that there's a lot of people that will get involved in the goal, and they get blessed along the way. And when you set a quality of life goal, you have a greater opportunity of achieving the success you want, because it's just not a one-off thing. There's a lot of different things along the way that you'll realize that you might not have even thought about when you were setting the goal in the first place.
Yeah, that's true. I remember when I got out of high school and I went in the service, and then I came home and went off to college. I set certain goals for myself, and I always mm-hmm. found I was falling short of the time period that I gave myself, or the time period just wasn't enough for me, or something else got in the way. I never, for the life of me, thought I was ever going to end up doing what I'm doing now. I mm-hmm. set out in life to follow in my father's footsteps, which was to fly airplanes for a living. As I told you yesterday, mm-hmm. he was a pilot for one of the airlines, and that was my goal. But little did I realize I'm not very good in math. I'm not really all that brave, even though I flew in the military a little bit. But after I got out of the Air Force, I thought, I don't really think I want to do that for a living anymore. There's something else out there for me. And yeah. This kind of happened by mistake, because a college mate of mine, I was studying journalism in college, and a college mate mm-hmm. of mine, when I went to the University of Miami, was connected to the theater department as well as the college radio station. And bada bing, lo and behold, it started happening for me.
Well, and that's more the way it happens for most of us. We don't necessarily set out to end up in the ditch or to be on top of the mountain. A lot of times, it's like in golf. Goodness, the course will have its way with you no matter how good you are hitting the ball.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely.
And that's the same. And that's the same thing with life. And I think timing is another thing. And our willingness to look at failure in a way that society doesn't necessarily want us to wrap our arms around. And, I've suggested that failure is a design variable. It's not an outcome. And they don't teach how to process failure. They don't teach it in school. If they did, we wouldn't have GPAs. And what we need to, I think, be encouraged about is that failure is going to define who we are. Our ability to overcome that failure is going to be the definition of who Gary is and who Tom is. Not the fact that, we inherited a lot of money or we had this success or that success. It's, what did we overcome? Yeah. And that even helps us look at ourselves in a much more positive way. Whereas, a lot of people think of failure as, well, gosh, you're a failure. Well, no, you're not.
No,
so,
I think it goes back to something my grandfather said to me, and so did my father. You show me a man who's never failed, and I'll show you someone who's never tried.
Yeah.
You know?
Well, and the trying is important. But I think with the trying, there has to be the ability not to quit.
Yes.
And that really is going to, your ability to stick. And here's another thing. I'll go back to, when you were talking about flying, when I teach in MBA programs, I will ask, the first year students, you need to find, what you do for free. If you go to work for money, you're going to end up hating your job, your boss, and your life. Right. You find out what you do for free, you're in a much better place. Your friends are in a much better place around you, your family, and so forth. And money will come. Money will eventually show up. But you've got to be willing to, go a long time doing things that you would do for free. When I say for free, yes, we got to pay bills and this, that, and the other, but it's not out in front of us. It's not the carrot that we think that we need to have to be successful.
No, I know a ton of people that are extremely successful, at least you would think so by what's in their bank account, and they're so unhappy, worried about who's going to steal their money, what's going to happen to them, are they going to lose this? They're handcuffed to their job, and they're not happy. Tom, before we go very far, I know you are a man of faith, deeply devoted to the Lord Jesus Christ, and as I am. How important is it to have something to believe in? Lou Holtz, the great Lou Holtz, has 4 things that he always talks about that you need in your life, and one of them is something to believe in or faith. How important was that as you went through your life with the ups and downs as we get into a kickstart and getting over life's obstacles? How important was your faith to you?
Well, it was extremely important. I guess you could say I was younger when I accepted Jesus. I was in my 20s. But that was just the beginning. It wasn't like, okay, well, I'm a Christian now and it's all good. What really made the difference, if we could fast forward 20 years from then, was when I made him Lord. And that's where my life did a 180 after that. And it doesn't mean that it was easier. It doesn't mean that it was without difficulties, but it gave a sense of purpose to what was going on. Anyway, authority is kind of a touchy thing these days, in that, we don't really see healthy models of how authority works. We've got kids that think they're the authority, and we've got authority that doesn't know how to be authority. And I think we've gotten away from the fact that, if we realize the intent of authority, it makes everybody's life better. And what I mean by that is the purpose of authority is to provide safety. And if we're looking to submit to an authority, then that's going to make our life safer. Well, in the spiritual sense, I wanted my life to be safer, and so I submitted to Jesus. And then after I did that, I had to understand that he was the boss. And that really allowed dealing with the difficulties, as I said earlier, to have a sense of purpose.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Dr. Charles Stanley, who is a big hero of mine, often says that once you surrender to God and you put it in his hands, he'll come through for you. It may not be when you want it. It may be a while longer because he has something better for you, or he needs to prepare you for what you want to do. But if it's what he wants you to do, you will eventually get where he wants you to be with what dream you have, because the Holy Spirit put the thought into your brain to begin with.
Absolutely. And that's another piece of this, Gary, is that, we've got to be willing to listen to what God's going to tell us. You asked me earlier what my family thought about me going back to college and trying to make a football team as a kicker. Well, it was what I thought when I first heard the idea. I mean, I was going, what? Because it wasn't on my radar at all.
No. Well, earlier in your life, you had a disappointment in the football arena as well, but
yes.
And we'll discuss that as we get into the book. One question that I told you I was going to ask you. What motivates the motivator? Because I know you're a motivational speaker, and I know you talk to a lot of different people on various subjects. But what motivates you to get up in the morning and do what you do?
God's love. That's what does it. The fact that I know how much he loves me, and that I'm to do my part in sharing that love with the people I get to talk to and deal with. And, love my family, interact with friends, deal with unpleasant situations. That's another thing that, we don't like to consider that those things happen, but, God's love will motivate you through that.
Yeah. Let's get into the some of the things that the advice that you give out when you are motivating people and you're speaking, and what you tell some of your NBA students. Do we have a tendency as a people to listen to our inner negative too much, and we defeat ourselves before we even get out of the starting blocks as far as whatever career we decide to do, wherever we decide to go? Do we allow outside interferences to influence us so much that we lose control of our own goals in life?
Well, I think that, can happen to people, and certainly how you're predisposed in your thinking. I mean, too much negative is going to give not a very desirable result, and too much positive doesn't either. And this is where I feel like, it's important that, you have the ability. Well, I'll put it this way. Do you know people, Gary, that want to change their lives? Okay. But most of them, I would argue, aren't willing to change how they think.
True.
And that's the first thing you've got to do, is to change how you think about, well, to begin with yourself. If you've been thinking in a negative way about yourself for a good while, and things aren't getting any better, you need to step back and reassess how it is you think about you. And then the other thing is to think, differently about others in the world you live in. And one thing I would say is crucial is rethink your friends. If you're not in a good spot, who are the people you hang with? I mean, I think it was Zig Ziglar that said this, but it's been something I've ascribed to for a long time. And he said, I can tell who you're going to be 5 years from now by two things. The first thing is by the books you read, and the second thing is the people you associate with. So, I mean, and that will influence your thinking. People get the idea that, with leadership, for example, there's a lot of people that may think, well, I'm in a position of leadership. Well, my first question to those folks would be, how can you lead others when you can't lead yourself?
True. Yeah.
And you've got to learn to lead you. How does Tom lead Tom? How does Gary lead Gary? And then after you've learned how to lead yourself, you need to teach someone else how to do the same.
Mm-hmm.
And all this is comes from my co-authors and Fit to Lead and things like that. And they're preeminent leadership professors, and just listening to people that are more concerned about influence than they are about position or power.
Yeah. We're talking to Dr. Tom Thompson. He is the author of Kickstart, Your Future, Overcoming Life's Obstacles, as well as Fit to Lead, which is an interesting 8-week proven program shaping your body, your mind, and your career all in one. When people set out in your MBA programs, and already if they're in an MBA program, that means they've already pretty much, I guess, selected the career that they're going into, and now they're just getting a little more knowledge. But do you think that people fail a lot of times as well, besides the other stuff that we just talked about, the negative influences, everything, because they don't really set realistic goals? They don't have the discipline or the confidence or the understanding of their strengths and weaknesses, as well as the sacrifice that it takes to get there. Because for everything that you do that's a success, it's going to cost you something. It may be your social life. It may be monetary. It may be other things that you enjoy doing. But in order to get where you need to be, you're going to have to sacrifice something and be willing to do things that other people aren't willing to do to get where you need to be. Do people fully understand that when they set out in life to achieve certain goals?
Well, I think some may and some may not. I think that also a lot of it has to do with, a lot of people really don't have any idea of why they're here. That's going to help frame a lot of the things that we do. I mean, I finally came to the realization in my 40s, why I'm here. And once I got that, all this other stuff is come with that. And and a lot of young people will, it's what I found kind of fascinating. They get their value out of what they've decided to do rather than what they have done. And I think that's and I think that's where maybe we have let them down, with the sense that we haven't really given them the how. I mean, people can go to church and they'll hear the why they should love one another, but everybody's screaming for the how, because Gary and Tom won't do it the same. But we both need to get to that outcome. Yeah. And we need to be able to show the people that I think that God will put in our path how to do those things. And it's like I said earlier about self-leadership. Well, it's going to take a while to learn to lead ourselves. And one of the things I found, Gary, is our ability to say no to ourselves will determine our growth and how fast it is. And so it's setting those limitations on ourselves that will help us. And you talked about the discipline and the sacrifice and all that. Well, okay, how do we get to that? Well, you get to that by being able to say no. It's easy to say yes to ourselves, but it's really hard to say no. Yeah, I mean, there are times when you know better, and you think, well, I want that, I'm going to go and do that, and instead you should be saying, no, that's not the right decision to make. It's like, I've just had a gallon of ice cream and I'm going to go get some more. No, you shouldn't be doing that at all. I realize I'm simplifying that a great deal. No. But you're right. I mean, I had a great friend of mine who's no longer with us who said that if you don't have discipline and if you don't understand how to control your urges in life, you're never going to get anywhere. And I truly believe that. Do you think that people also need to be more proactive in their lives instead of reactive? Oh, I think so. I think, I mean, again, you want to keep things in balance, because if all you're doing is going out and being proactive, you may be missing a strategic retreat. And because there's strategy sometimes in stepping back from what it is that you're doing, because again, we're trying to be in the right place at the right time. And if we're constantly going and trying to open a door or get in front of somebody with our product or whatever it is, we could blow that timing to shreds.
Right.
And so being balanced with that, I think, is important. But I think really the individual is there's not really a formula, is what I'm trying to get at. The individual is going to have to modulate how they do that.
Right. Do you think that we rush into things too easily? In other words, I always use this as a metaphor for it, or an analogy, whatever word you want to use. But, Vegas, where I know you spent some time, I spent 10 years there. You can get married and divorced in 72 hours. Do you think that people, like in marriage, we rush into things and not thoroughly think them out, whereas we should sit back, do our research, and say, is this really what I want to do? And I'm not talking about going and buying a pair of jeans or maybe dating some gal down the street. I'm talking about, issues that are important for one's life, because let's face it, every 7 to 10 years, we change, Tom. We change in our wants, our likes, where we want to go, the directions of our lives. Do we rush into things too quickly without thinking about it?
Well, I think some can. I know in my case, when I was younger, no one would probably argue that I did any thinking, but, I just think experience is going to dictate a lot of that too. I mean, if you're not getting out and exploring and discovering and that sort of thing, it's going to make it a little bit, because the last thing in the world you want to do is go through stuff in your 40s that could have happened in your 20s.
Yeah. Because
you're a lot more rigid and it's tougher to come back from.
Yeah.
But I do think there's some of that. And there again, I think it's back to with the friends that you have and how you interact with family and whatnot, irrespective of, the dysfunctional piece that probably is more prevalent now than it was even when you and I were growing up.
Right. I mean, it really is nowadays. Although I'll be honest with you, if they say that children that are growing up today will probably change careers 3 and 4 times before they finally pass away, which brings up the question that I know you feel as though people at 65, and this is true in so many ways, and I agree with you. There's no law that says at 65 you have to retire. There's no law that says at 75 you have to retire. There's no law anywhere written that says you have to retire. I know people go
except for being a pilot.
Well, yeah, I mean, when you're with the airlines at 65, you have to retire now. My dad retired at 60. But, I mean, there's no law, there's no written rule that says that you have to retire from life. I know that I've talked to many people that are retired, and they say, how many cruises can I take? How many golf clubs can I go to? How many rounds of golf can I play? How many times can I go play mahjong with my wife? I've got to go, and I've been a productive person all my life. I still have something I want to do. There are things I want to have. So nowadays, people in their 50s and 60s and even 70s are changing careers, and they're finding maybe true happiness for the first time in their lives. So in reality, the world has revolved in that direction, Tom. We're talking to Tom Thompson, who is the author of 2 wonderful, wonderful books, Fit to Lead and Kickstart, a story of overcoming life's obstacles to kickstart your future. That in your 40s can be like your 20s again, because let's face it, we are living longer. We are healthier than our father's generation, when at 65, the retirement age was there because people didn't live to be 70. So, I mean, how do you speak to people now that say, well, I'm not I don't have the finances to retire at 65. You say, so what? You probably don't want to retire anyway.
Well, that's absolutely correct, because like you said earlier, you can only play so many rounds of golf and take so many cruises and whatnot, and then your life becomes so boring.
Yeah.
And I'd rather be busy than bored.
Oh, yeah.
And that's the other thing is we're constantly, I don't know, Gary, this is something I ascribed to a while back. If we're more concerned about what we're giving than what we're getting, we end up getting far much more than we ever could have gotten on our own.
Yeah.
And if we're looking to help people, and I don't mean make their life easier. I mean, if I may, when I was working on my doctorate, the first week in the residency I was in, Dr. Charles Mance came and spoke to our cohort, our group. Mm-hmm. And at the end of his talk, he said he was beginning to look at the link between physical fitness and leadership performance. Well, that was right up my alley. And as soon as he was through with his presentation, I bolted to the front, introduced myself. And, of course, he had everybody in the world that's probably said to him, I'd love to help you with your research. Well, I said the very same thing, but when he found that I was affiliated with the Cooper Fitness Center in Dallas, he gave me his business card and said, here, get in touch with my co-author and maybe we can do something together. Well, anyway, long story short, that meeting created the book Fit to Lead. Mm-hmm. And I could never, I mean, I was a first-year doctoral student with a published book by the largest publisher in the world. Now, I couldn't do that on my own. I couldn't have gone out and, you see what I'm saying?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. And it's a great book, Fit to Lead. You can get it on Amazon.com. Mm-hmm. It's an 8-week proven solution for shaping your body, mind, and career. And I highly recommend it. I was able to get a few excerpts from it. And it is a wonderful book. And, yeah, I believe so. I mean, I'm a couch potato. I'll be honest with you. I'm a real couch potato. But, yeah, fitness is a very important thing, because if your mind is sharp, your body is ready to go. And people sense that. It's a thing of confidence with inside yourself, and you have to have confidence to be successful. I think you can't walk around moping about yourself because nobody will take you serious.
Well, and being able to fulfill your purpose in life is going to require you to be physically fit. I don't know if you knew this, but the original Greek word for fit is useful. It doesn't mean that you have an Adonis body and, you can lift a lot of weight and do all this other stuff. It means that you're physically useful, and it allows you to, again, have the quality of life that we all aspire to. The big fib is, if you watch TV or read the newspapers, that if you go to the gym, you can look like you did when you were in your 20s. Mm-hmm. Well, I own gyms, and I could live there, and it would not happen. But what I can achieve is I can look, act, feel, and function 10 years younger than my chronological age. Yeah. And that allows for quality of life. And that's really the goal. And I'll ask you this.
Yeah.
Have there ever been days you didn't want to go to work?
Oh, God, yeah.
Okay.
I'm not talking about radio.
No. No, but why did you go when you didn't want to go?
Because I had to. Because I also I have a strong work ethic, and if I agree to go,
I want you to set that aside, though.
Okay.
Set the work ethic aside, because just in getting to know you the last few days, I know that you have that. Mm-hmm. But why did you go to work? Well, here's what most people say, Gary. Yeah. They say it's for the money. Mm. I said, no, you're halfway there. It's about quality of life, because if you stop going to work, you don't get the money, and your quality of life drops.
Yeah, true.
So the whole goal of working out and staying fit is to have a higher quality of life. And that's really what we're missing when we think about, going to work out. It's like going to your job. If you go work out, you'll have a higher quality of life. If you don't go, the quality of life's going to suffer.
Which brings up an interesting question. I'm glad you talked that. Do you think that we settle a lot of times if we can't achieve the quality of life that we want and we think it's unattainable? Do you think that we have, as a people, now I'm not talking about individuals, but as a people,
Mm-hmm.
as a unit here in the United States, throughout the world, do you think we settle a lot of times?
Oh yes. So it's almost epidemic, settling. I mean, you hear people these days, well, don't settle if you get married. Don't do this. Don't settle for that job. Don't settle for, well, it's not a matter of settling as much as it is creating a stairway. You have to create steps. And if you don't create steps, you're not going to get anywhere, especially at a higher level.
Right.
And so it's changing how we think about those things.
Right.
If we see something as a stair step as opposed to settling, it makes the journey different.
Do you think in setting those steps, you should not now set a time frame? In other words, it's taken me a little bit longer to maybe do things than I wanted to do if I was, 20 or 30 years ago. For instance, getting back into radio. EW has given me this platform, and this fall I'll be going to work for a radio station not far from here. But I'm also going to continue with this show because I love doing this show. But it's taken me a little bit longer than I wanted to. When I moved to Vegas, I had no intentions of getting back into show business at all, and it happened, but it took a little bit longer than maybe it would have if I had done it 20 years earlier. Do we also put restrictions on ourselves by putting a time frame, and if it doesn't happen, boom, we should never do that to ourselves? Like comparing ourselves to someone else, we should never do that?
No, we should never compare ourselves to anybody else. But what I would say, Gary, is this. Rather than put an arbitrary time on something, realize that your dreams don't have an expiration date. And dreams they're a driver. And oftentimes we think, well, I'm too old for the dream to happen. Oh, really? Well, I mean, we talked about this. I mean, I wanted to play college football when I was 19 or 20. Well, I didn't do it then, but I did it. But what I'm getting at is that we can't, if we're not in charge of the day we're born and the day we die,
yes,
how in the world can we be in charge of anything else?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the only person
so in the meantime,
the only person who knows we're going to live and die is the Lord.
Yeah, and that's the when. He knows the when, and it's our job we're responsible for the how we live. That's our job. And really, all we have to do is show up. Goodness, it's like the business stats. If you want to be in the top 20% of your company, show up to work.
Yeah.
If you want to be in the top 10%, you show up on time. And if you want to be in the top 5%, you show up on time, ready to work.
Right.
And we're in charge of that. That's something we can do. And I had some great advice from an incredible man a number of years ago. That it rings true to me this very day, and that is God will reward faithfulness. And if we're faithful to Him, if we're faithful to ourselves, if we're faithful to our friends, and again, it's the showing up. We talked about discipline earlier. Well, my definition of discipline is showing up again the next day after getting your butt whipped the day before. Yeah.
I've been there.
Yeah, and see what that does is, but you being able to do that, then you are developing that discipline that we're talking about that's going to allow you to be patient. Here's oftentimes, if I can put it in this metaphor, forgive me, but this is what I did anyway. We're walking along the road of life, and everything's hunky-dory, and we look off to the right, and we see this sparkly, shiny thing. And we go, wow, that's really interesting. And so we start heading off in that direction. And at first, we don't realize that we're walking into a pile of poop. And when it's around your ankles, you don't see or smell anything.
Yeah.
Then all of a sudden, you get so far out in that pile of poop it's up around your nose, and you turn and you go, God help me, I'm in a pile of poop. And he goes to help you, and he just say, turn around and walk back.
Yeah.
Well, at first, when you turn around, you still see it, and you still smell it.
Mm-hmm.
And you're going, I'm not out of this. I thought you were going to help me. Well, the only way we're going to, make a success out of it is that we make it back to where we're supposed to be. And that will give us a sense of, you know what? I need to stay on the path I'm given. Mm-hmm. I don't need to be looking at the shiny things. I don't need to be looking. And here's the other thing I would say, Gary. God gives us enough light for each day to take another step. Because if we saw the things that were out there trying to keep us from where we're supposed to go, it'd scare us to death. We'd never get there.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. I think the old expression, when people talk about their early success in life, they say, I guess I was too stupid to realize I'm not supposed to be able to do that. Yeah. And it's very true. I want to change course here a little bit, and we're going to get into some of the influences in your life from the show business community. We are talking to Tom Thompson, who is a author, a fitness expert, as well as a gentleman who managed to secure himself in the NCAA record book at the age of 61 by kicking a football. He's the author of Fit to Lead, as well as a Kickstart, a story of overcoming life's obstacles to kickstart your future. And both of those books can be got, I believe, on Amazon. And what a wonderful thing it is. You did not have a great life growing up. Your father came from wealth, but your father kind of squandered some of it. He didn't squander all of it, and he did have an income for a long time. But you have been through several divorces, several. Mm-hmm. At one point, your mother told you to get out of the house and go live with your father, which was okay by you to a certain extent because you didn't have a great relationship with your dad. Tell us a little bit about it, because I find it absolutely fascinating. The one chapter, chapter 6, My Father and James Bond, which I found quite interesting in your book, Kickstart. Talk about that, would you?
Well, like many young men that are in my generation, we grew up with James Bond. I remember seeing the very first film, and at the age of 15, I thought, you know what, I want to be like that. And I didn't have, as you said, much of a relationship with my dad. My parents had separated, and so I would see him on Fridays when he would come by to pick up my brother and I and take us to dinner and a movie. And so everything that James Bond was trying to do, that was what Tom used as a template. And I guess that's all fine and dandy until you start to become an adult. And then the wheels seem to fall off of that model.
Right.
But I was interested in flying planes and martial arts and scuba diving and all the stuff that he did. And I guess I chased and caught the fastest women on the planet, and that didn't work out too well. And anyway, it was so unrealistic. But it was really, it was the closest thing I could have to some sort of continuity, if you will, in terms of a male influence. I wasn't very good in school, which kept me off the football field. And so I didn't have really coaches helping me. Mm-hmm. So anyway.
Yeah, and it was at 15 years old one day that your mother came in and gave you 1 hour to pack, and you were going to go live with your father, and she dropped you off at the front door. And actually, it turned out to be a pretty good move for you for a period of time, did it not?
It did. It did. It was a lot of uncertainty. I didn't have any idea of what the next day was going to hold for a while. I didn't even think he was going to let me stay there. Mm-hmm. But it did allow me to develop a relationship with my dad, although I still didn't see him very much because after that first year, he and my mother were going through a divorce, and so he moved to Mexico, and so he sent me to military school, and I would only see him occasionally. And then in my senior year, he had contracted cancer, and he didn't live too much longer after that.
Yeah. You say in Chapter 6 that research suggests that the family environment does influence academic performance. Do you think that's true in every case? I know I have told you that your life and my life in that sense parallel a great deal. My life was pretty happy, but there were some things that made it unstable from time to time. But I had every opportunity in the world. I was just plain lazy to a certain extent. But like you, I got C's and D's and the occasional B, and that changed when I went to college. But do you think that one's family environment and as well as neighborhood environments can dictate your academic performance?
Well, anecdotally, I absolutely do. And I would be inclined to think that the research would support that. If you have your family intact, you have a much better chance to be successful in school, I think. And because you're getting influences that you wouldn't get if there was you're in a single parent situation. And then of course we know that the socioeconomic situation greatly impacts academic success. So I think, both of those things can have something to do with it. And then just also, your own personality and behavioral characteristics. If you're not one to, I always felt like I had to go to school. I never wanted to go to school.
Yeah, I know that. Yeah.
I mean, I hated school. So
I couldn't wait to get out of high school and get away from the people I went to high school with. I couldn't wait. I mean, I just literally couldn't wait. One of your chapters that I found fascinating, and I'm now going to mention the guest that we're going to have on next week, because there's you two both knew this gentleman. This guy knew him a lot more. But Chapter 11, Cinnamon, Elvis, and Chuck Norris. Next week on this program, I have Wink Martindale joining me again for the second time. And Wink Martindale and Elvis Presley were the best of friends. They grew up together, and not didn't grow up together, but they knew each other from Wink's days being a disc jockey in Memphis, Tennessee. Talk about how you got to meet. Well, first Cinnamon, that was a woman who you had a crush on television, and you married.
Yeah.
And you married a woman who was a flight attendant, I think, for one of the airlines. And you traveled around. Then you got to meet Chuck Norris because of your love for karate and smart martial arts. And then that's how you got to meet Priscilla, who I knew, and Elvis Presley.
Yes, that's correct. Cinnamon was the name of you remember the TV show Mission Impossible?
Yes.
And Barbara Bain played that character. Her name was Cinnamon. And then when I married and we had a child, we named our daughter Cinnamon. And how I ended up meeting Elvis was I'd gone over to Japan with a business partner to start up an import business bringing martial arts uniforms to this country. And we stopped in L.A. on the way back to attend the International Karate Championships, which has always been considered the world championship for martial arts, at least in this country. And that's where I was introduced to Chuck Norris and Priscilla. Well, while I was in Japan, I picked up what many believe to be the very first portable videotape recorder. And it's something you could carry over. You had a shoulder strap, and there was this looked like a typewriter, but it was a lot smaller. And then you had a camera where you could film whatever it was you were filming, and then play it back on the monitor that you were carrying, or plug it into your TV. Well, Elvis had sent Priscilla to the event because he was very much involved in martial arts, and he wanted her to film the finals. Well, I was sitting next to her filming this and playing it back, and she said, I don't know why, I'm doing this when you can just keep filming and bring it out and show Elvis. So I kind of thought to myself, well, that's a nice notion. And 2 weeks later, we got a phone call, and we were asked to come out there, and we spent the weekend and with Chuck Norris and Mike Stone and Alan Steen and Ed Daniels and myself, and then spent the weekend and then came back.
And I know that you said at the age of 22, you even after spending their time with celebrities and stuff, you had this terrible empty feeling in your life, like something wasn't right. And soon after, you got a divorce from your wife, and you felt as though Elvis even felt the same way about his world that he lived in, that it wasn't it wasn't fulfilling enough. Something was missing.
Correct. That's right. And then I remember I was raised Catholic, and by the time I was 16, I'd become an atheist and didn't want to have any part of that. Well, as my life began to crumble, I remembered, that conversation that I had, that I wanted to know who God was. And I overheard somebody talking about this non-denominational church in Dallas that just taught the Bible. And I was standing in line waiting to go have dinner. And it was probably the following Sunday that I actually went, and that's where I got saved.
Oh, that's fantastic. That's fantastic. Let's now get to the part of the book that I know everybody's probably thinking, how at 61 or your late 50s into 61, it took 2.5 years before you got on the field to make that kick that day.
Right.
Bring us from the point when you decided to do this to the point where you said, when you got on the field and you made that kick. This is in chapter 1, by the way, of the book. It's called The Kick of a Lifetime. Please get this book, ladies and gentlemen. I'm telling you, this is by Dr. Emmett C. Tom Thompson II, with Alice Sullivan as co-writer. It's called Kickstart, a story of overcoming life's obstacles to kickstart your future. Please get this book. It's a wonderful, wonderful book. But bring us through the whole thing. We got about 10 minutes left in the program.
Okay. Well, I was sitting in my office at one of my fitness centers, and I was on the internet, and I was reading a story about a gentleman by the name of Mike Flint, and this is in 2007, who at the age of 59 had gone back to college to complete his senior year of football. And I'm thinking, I'm in the health and fitness industry, and I'm thinking, my goodness, if you maintain fitness throughout your life, when you get older, you might be able to do that sort of thing. So I got on the phone with one of my co-authors of Fit to Lead to kick around the idea of writing a book based on that premise. Well, in our concept talks, Gary, I just brought up, I said, well, even though I've got a terminal degree, I might still have some eligibility left. Looking back to my spotty, I didn't go back to school till I was 45 to finish everything. And so he said, well, sure, because it wasn't him. And so I started sending out emails to the NCAA, and I ended up getting an email back stating that at the Division III level, the conference arbitrates eligibility. Well, I had to obviously do Division III because there's an age limit at Division II and I. You can only be 26 years old before that's the oldest you can be unless you've been in the military. So I get this email back from the athletic director at Austin College politely telling me that chances are I don't have eligibility, but after a phone conversation, he thought I might. So he's a great guy. His name's Tim Millerick. He championed this to the NCAA. And now think about this for a minute, Gary. I don't know that there's a lot of athletic directors that when the NCAA says no, that they would keep going. And
no.
I would have expected they would have said, you know what, it's a nice idea. Thanks for trying. Have a nice day. But he continued to, present it. It took 11 months before they finally agreed that I had the eligibility. And but what they told me was I was going to have to spend a year as an undergraduate before I could play. Now, to some, that would have that might have killed it for a lot of people. You're going, gee whiz, a whole year, and I already have a doctorate. Why do I need to be in an undergrad program? But it actually worked out better for me because it allowed me to develop relationships with, my teammates and coaches and everything else.
Mm-hmm.
Well, the spring that I was able to go out prior to the 2009 season, honestly, I didn't start learning how to kick a football until I was 59. And I remember coming off the practice field after the first time in my life I'd actually kicked in a live situation, whereas everything else had been with a static holder. It was awful. And the head coach, who was a no-nonsense coach, said, Tom, you're not very good. I said, I know, Coach, I've got a lot of work to do. Well, that summer, I was kicking the ball quite a bit, and I ended up tearing my quadricep. And fortunately, a good friend of mine, who's my doctor, found it, and we were able to rehab it in time for me to go to fall camp. And in fall camp, I re-injured it. So I didn't get to do anything for the first 3 weeks of the season. And I'm saying that to say, you would have thought that once I had the eligibility and everybody's going, yeah, you can play and everything else, it was going to be smooth sailing. No, it wasn't. I will never forget these two situations, and I'll be brief. One, my wife and family, I live 65 miles away from Austin College, and I was driving there every day. And I remember driving there saying, you know what, God, Nolan Ryan doesn't have to ask you to help him be a good pitcher. If you don't want me to do this, I need to know that I need to stop because it's affecting my family. And that afternoon is when the athletic director told me that I had the eligibility. And then the other thing that I wanted to say was I remember rehabbing this leg, and 3 weeks into the season, I couldn't kick a football once. And I remember, just crying out to God, and I'm on a different practice field than the rest of the team, and I'm by myself, and I'm just doing exercise and everything else. And it was like I heard in my spirit, I made you for this. Well, the minute I knew that was why I'm here, it allowed me to process all the disappointment and failure. And I was never going to be guaranteed to get on that field because, as I mentioned, the coach is a no-nonsense Texas High School Hall of Fame football coach that doesn't do anything for mercy. And I got put in the game, in the last game of the season, early in the second quarter, to tie the score against our biggest rival. And talk about pressure. But I had a massive turnaround in my performance 2 weeks prior to the end of the season. The coach said, you keep kicking like this, I will put you in after we score our first touchdown. And, well, the rest is history, so to speak.
Yeah.
But that's how it happened. And what was that moment?
What was that moment like when you were waiting for the center to snap the ball to the holder? You said in the book that it's almost like you couldn't hear anything else going on except concentrating on that kick.
The minute I was told to go in, it was as though, do you remember the scene in Saving Private Ryan?
Yes.
When they're storming the beach? It was like that. It was that white noise. And I went out there, and I set up like I always would set up, and the ball was snapped. Well, the ball came back and was landed on the ground sideways. And I'm in mid kick, and I'm thinking to myself, I've come this far, I'm at least going to kick the ball. Well, the holder, who he himself was new, because we had 8 players that were kicked off the team for violating team rules. He was a substitute holder. He popped that ball up the last second, and I was able to make the kick.
Well, I know. I know that's the kind of feeling you get because I talked to Jim O'Brien, who kicked for the old Baltimore Colts when he kicked in Super Bowl V, and he said the whole stadium just goes silent. And a lot of field goal kickers think that timeout before that the other coach, the opposing coach, will call on them, that doesn't to freeze them. It doesn't do anything. It just, they concentrate more and they zone out everything that's going on except for that kick. So it's interesting. Tom, we're out of time for this session of the Express. I'm going to have you back, I promise. We've been listening to a wonderful gentleman, Tom Thompson, who is an author of 2 wonderful books, Fit to Lead, as well as a story of overcoming life's obstacles to kickstart your future. Find those books on Amazon.com. You're going to love it. Tom, thank you so much for taking time out of your day to join us here on The Express.
Hey, Gary, thank you. It's been a blessing. Appreciate it.
I'll call you either tomorrow or maybe after the show, but thank you so much. And I just want to remind everybody to get a hold of me on Facebook at Gary Allen, ALAN. Go to YouTube.com. You can hear all my past shows as well as this show coming up on Friday. Go Thursday night at 7 p.m. to diversitybroadcastnetwork.com, and you'll be able to hear a replay of this program, as well as go on progressivevoices.com, tunein.com, TMV Cafe. Make one of your favorites, and you can catch me wherever, as well as the other shows on this program. I want to thank all of you for taking a few minutes out of your day to join us here on The Express, as well as Tom, EW, back in the studio. Thank you so very, very much. And please, until next week, take care of yourselves and each other.
You've been listening to The Express with Gary Allen. Join us here every Tuesday night at 10 for more captivating talk with Gary Allen. See you next time on The Express.